As we've previously reported, gun control advocacy continues to be a significant talking point in campaign ads for Democrats across the country. More than 100,000 ads promoting gun control have aired this year alone, and that's 22 times more than the number of pro-gun control ads that ran in the last midterm elections in 2014. Or pro-gun ads. These ads are in favor of the House and Senate and gubernatorial candidates, as well as general ads that are supportive of increased gun regulations. It seems clear that the increases are a reaction to the highly publicized mass casualty incidents, most notably the massacre at Stoneman Douglas High School this past February, which thrust the Second Amendment debate into wall-to-wall coverage and altered the landscape of this political season. Now, unfortunately, pro-Second Amendment ads are not rising to meet this level of saturation. And while there has been an increase with pro-Second Amendment ads being seen a little more than 2.5 times as much this year than as compared to 2014, they're still falling way behind at roughly 60% the amount of saturation that gun control ads see. And none of this even begins to account for the free coverage that gun control advocacy and advocates receive thanks to friendly networks like MSNBC and CNN and other cable outlets who rarely bring on opposing opinions or who regularly allow for the dissemination of falsehoods on their shows, for claims to go unchallenged by show hosts on their network, for things to be stated that are simply false as truth, and that to be reported as such by said host or by contributors or other advocates that are on the program. So with more eyeballs hearing gun control than Second Amendment, and with news networks continuing to toe that line from gun control groups run and operated by Michael Bloomberg, what are the chances that it will impact the midterm outcomes? My next guest works for an organization that tirelessly covers the slanted perspectives of the legacy press. Brittany Hughes is a managing editor and host at NRATV. She joins us now. Brittany, good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me back, Dana. I'm always glad to be here.
What's fascinating to me about the gun control advocacy is previously this has been something that Democrats have, or anti-gun advocates, or how far left candidates, however you want to slice it up, they've talked about it on the campaign trail, but they've always been sort of hesitant to really push it hard in ads. I mean, in the 90s, Bill Clinton ended up losing his control in Congress partly due to the push for gun control, and it was a lesson that those individuals, those advocates, seem to have learned. But now that tide has changed, and they don't seem, Brittany, to be as afraid as they were historically of talking and really aggressively pushing it.
Yeah, so this is what you see primarily on the Democratic side as a larger push, not even just the ads. What they have in terms of ads is they have Michael Bloomberg, of course, who founded Everytown USA and Moms Demand Action and those different groups, which are very famous for peddling false gun statistics and putting out false information that they've even been called out by left-leaning outlets every so often when they put out something false. But look, that's where the majority of these ads are coming from. 103,000, almost 103,000 ads have run between January 1st and September 9th of this year alone against guns, whether it's general ads or targeted campaign ads. But I think what you also see is a general push against guns in the Democratic Party in general. You think even there are candidates across the board that actually are running as Democrats who used to be staunch advocates of the NRA. I mean, you've got Tim Walz up in Minnesota. You've got Ann Kirkpatrick out in Arizona. You've got Mike Thompson out in California. These are candidates that used to brag about their A rating from the NRA, that used to be staunch advocates of gun rights, and now they're running on anti-gun platforms. So I think you see a coordinated effort on the left to come out against guns. We've seen it, unfortunately, since, an even greater push since February, since the Parkland shooting, where victims of that shooting were exploited. They were thrown all over national television. They were given microphones and trotted all over the United States and even parts of Canada, coming out with anti-gun statements and these huge platforms. And I think what you're seeing now is a whole bunch of Democrats who are now dropping what used to be their platform and kind of running where the wind has taken them with this anti-gun push in order to use it to win. Now, whether or not that will translate into actual wins, I think remains to be seen. I mean, I think in places like Montana, places like Texas, you're going to have a hard time winning on that platform, but we are seeing more of them try, and they're fueled by multimillionaires who are backing anti-gun ads and getting their message out a lot more so than pro-Second Amendment ads we've seen this year.
And it seems as though they feel that this election cycle is the one to really turn up the heat, which is weird, though, because in Florida, their last election, when they were looking at exit polling data, I mean, if gun control wasn't a priority for Floridians, and gun control still isn't a priority for Americans across the country whenever polled. I mean, they're worried about jobs and immigration and trade and manufacturing and lower taxes, et cetera, et cetera. That, in many instances, it doesn't even make it into a top 15, top 20 list, which is interesting that they're going so hard on this issue, because for some of them, it seems like it's their single issue.
That's very true. 10% of all ads, of all these campaign ads, have been specifically talking about guns, and the majority of those are anti-gun ads. So I think you're seeing a bit of out of touchness here with what really matters to the American people. But if you actually look at the content of these ads, not just the prevalence of them, not just who's backing them, but the actual content, what they're saying in these ads, it's never about actual legislation they want to push. It's never about actual solutions that they want to propose. It's always two key buzzwords: stand up to the NRA, propose common sense gun laws. That is the message that you're repeatedly hearing. It's not actually specific. It's not saying what they actually plan to do. It's buzzwords. It's these things that they've just kind of spread all over the place and gone all over the mainstream media and talked up, but it doesn't tell you specifically what they plan to do or how they plan to solve any of these problems. What do those things even mean? So I think while you're seeing a widespread push, you're not seeing a specific platform, a specific policy proposal. You're hearing things that are very much designed to alienate people, very much designed to push them into a camp, and very much designed to fearmonger without specifically targeting what you're going to do. So I think that if you look at the actual content, that's all this is, no matter how many of them they put out there.
Yeah. If they ever got their messaging tuned in, and they ever, with some of the proposals that they had, if they ever kind of fix their messaging and not to have it so negative and really kind of void of real substantial policy, because as you said, you know, it's, I mean, they say a bunch of buzzwordy, you know, platitudes, and that's, they don't really back it up. I mean, when you talk about common sense, I mean, common sense is a great phrase, but how do you elaborate on that? You know, common sense, what does that mean? And most candidates can't do that. But with the amount of money that they have, I mean, I think of the amount of money that Bloomberg is dumping in. I was looking at one of the reports showing just how much they're putting in. I think, what, $10 million in midterm elections. You have all of the little, the fake media entity that they have with the Trace, and then you have the Moms Demand, and then the Mayors Against Illegal Guns, and then Everytown. I mean, they're trying to cover all of their bases. It's still, and I know that you can speak to this as well, I think voters should still be cautious, because at one point they're going to get it together enough to where they will at least sound somewhat competitive.
Well, I think one thing that they really are trying to do, and again, we're going to have to see if this actually translates into votes, but one thing that they're specifically trying to do is to push towards the younger generation, to try to get the younger generation on their side. This is why, and again, you have to kind of look behind what's actually being said, and you have to look behind all the emotion and all the hyperbole at what's actually being done. That's why they're shoving high school students in front of as many cameras as possible. They're trying to get their message to resonate with the younger people. That's who they see as their future voting base. That's who they see as the, you know, the votes that are going to eventually push them over. But whether or not that's going to translate into 2018 midterm votes remains to be seen, because again, those are not typically the people that often show up to the polls. So whether this is going to work for them this year, I don't know. I do think that you're right, that this is not something that's going to go away anytime soon. I think the next couple of years you're going to see a targeted push against gun rights from the left, and the right is going to need to have not only a response to that, but a well-marketed response to that, to try to push through with some truth. I think a lot of times, you know, the more ignorant the populace is about a specific issue, the easier it is to peddle lies. We've seen that with Everytown. They put out these fake statistics that they're a Google search away from finding out the truth, but you have to be willing to push back with the truth and educate people. That's what the right is going to have to do in the upcoming years.
Absolutely. Brittany, always so good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Dana.